and welcome. In this on-demand video, OJM Group Partner Michael Lewellen discusses how to determine the inflation rate to use in your retirement planning and covers a few upsides to today's high inflation. If you have more questions or want to learn how to incorporate this topic into your financial strategy, click the link below to schedule a complimentary one-on-one consultation with one of our experienced team members.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Lewellen, the Director of Financial Planning at OJM Group. And today we're going to be discussing an inflation rate that you should use in retirement. First, we're going to look at how to determine the inflation rate for retirement, and then what is the best one that you should be using for your situation. Part of any good financial plan is building in conservative assumptions, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works when using the inflation rate. And then finally, it may sound a little counterintuitive, but the upside to high inflation. So let's start. Obviously, inflation has been a very popular topic for clients to ask us about. Last year, the annual inflation number was 6.5%. At its peak in June of 2022, it was 9.1%. Year to date, it's been 4.9%. So obviously, it's been a topic that everyone's been wanting to talk about. And as a big part of that is, are we using the right inflation number when we've been looking at retirement projections for clients? So here's an exercise that we go through when we're trying to determine what is the best inflation rate to use in retirement. First, we can't look at last year, or just this year, or the peak of any given year. We need to look at longer terms, because hopefully retirement for you is going to be 20, 30, 40 years. So we look at the 20-year average inflation. You can see there it's been 2.25%, and the 30-year, which has been almost 2.5%. Those numbers obviously are significantly lower than what we've been experiencing at the time of this recording. The long-term CPI, I think it is important to point out, is 3.28%. Now, this goes all the way back to 1921. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. There's been a Great Depression. There was a world war that had a huge impact on the U.S. and the economy. And so we just feel, while it's a number that we look at, we put more emphasis on those 20-year and 30-year numbers that we're factoring in. Now, when we say inflation, a lot of times what we're talking about, obviously, is the consumer price index. It's the most common one that everyone looks at. There are different measures that are used, but when you're seeing it in the news, you're generally seeing the consumer price index, or the CPI. Now, what people don't realize is that housing is almost 1/3 of that number, right? So what we say to clients is, what impact is that going to have on you in retirement? So when we're trying to decide what's the right number from an inflation standpoint, we say, for most of our clients, their intention is to not be exposed to housing. So not to be paying a mortgage. Rent is a big part of that number as well, too. So the majority of our clients are homeowners. So it really comes down to, we ask our clients, if your goal is to have your home paid off in retirement, then we can reduce to some degree the inflation rate that we're looking at on that 20-year and that 30-year. Now, we don't take the full amount out. Generally, if you look at these numbers, when you're comparing to the 20 and the 30-year, we're reduced at 12 to 20%. So still, again, a conservative assumption, which we'll talk a little bit about here in the future. Now, for those clients that say, gosh, I don't think my house is going to be paid off for the first 10 years of retirement, or whatever it may be. And they're certainly paying off your home in retirement, or by retirement, depending upon the situation, might not be the right thing. If you've got a 30-year mortgage at 2% and that bleeds into retirement, it might not make financial sense to pay that off. Now, of course, the rate that you've got there is significantly lower, so that's a factor to take into consideration. But the majority of our clients will have the ability to pay their homes off. Again, if they're not, or if they want to factor in housing because they're going to be renting for half of the year somewhere, they're going to purchase a second home, a 2.5% to 3% rate is a good number to use. But if you're going to remove housing, we feel a 2 to 2.5% inflation number is the right number to be using. Now, you want to build in conservative assumptions when you're doing this, really when you're doing any part of your financial plan, is our belief. Here, the simplest way to do that would be when you're doing it is to not decrease your spending. A lot of times clients will come to us and say, well, I think I'm going to need 15,000 a month in retirement, but that'll probably go down, as I move into retirement. And obviously, if you're familiar with the SMILE concept, so you start high and they go up, so the expenses decrease at the first part of retirement as you move into the middle part of retirement, and then increase for health, living expenses, so forth, all those types of things. What we do is we just have an increase at that inflation rate all the time. So that's a conservative assumption that we're building in for our clients. So it's always at 2.5%. We're just assuming that it increases at that rate every year. You also want to make sure when you're doing that, the correlation between inflation and your rate of return is very significant when you're doing any retirement modeling. So use a conservative rate of return. We've been using 5% when our clients move into retirement. Now, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when inflation was under 1% at times, clients were concerned about earning 5% return. Their bonds weren't giving them anything, their cash weren't giving them anything. At the time of this recording, you could earn almost 5% on your cash. So we still use the 5% rate of return in retirement, but right now, that's a very conservative assumption because certainly they can almost earn that in cash. So just be thinking about that. I mean, even another example would be for the rate of return that we use ahead of retirement. So before you retire, if your portfolio is projected to earn 7%, we still reduce that down to 6%, just to give us conservative assumptions when we're building a financial plan for clients. And then obviously the advantage there is that, you're under promising and hopefully over delivering in that situation. Now, the upside to inflation, again, I kind of sound a little counterintuitive, but one of the benefits is what we already mentioned, earnings on cash. So for the last 10 years up to 2022, our clients were essentially not able to earn anything on their cash, right? And that's not typical, right? I mean, that's, if you look at it over the 20, 30 years, generally you've been able to get at least a little bit of something on your cash. Well, now, as I mentioned, you can earn up towards 5%, which is a very significant change. And, obviously the Fed, their hope is that they're able to keep interest rates, maybe not at that rate that you're getting on cash, but simply you're getting something. Bond yields is another one that's almost been, for investors, has been extremely difficult. There's nowhere securely to run to earn, an easy 4, 5% over the last, 5 to 10 years, obviously. And now that's changing. As interest rates go up, you're going to see bond yields increase too. Now, investment returns, this is a little, you have to think about it from a more of an academic standpoint, maybe not in the moment that we're in right now, but certainly one would expect if there is going to be inflation and it's going to be higher, then you would expect should be able to expect from a historical perspective, your investment returns to do better than what you were projected. And a big part of that is because what you're able to earn on cash and bond and all the other things from that standpoint. I think the other thing, last year we saw the largest increase in Social Security. And that may not be a huge part of your retirement plan, but certainly it had an impact. The increase in Social Security was over 8%. So for those that were drawing on it, it significantly benefited them from that standpoint. So you just want to make sure that you're taking advantage of what's available to you, and if there is, to the upside of inflation when it's happening. Now, the inflation rate in retirement is really just one variable when we're putting together retirement projections for clients. And as I mentioned, I believe being conservative in those assumptions is very, very important. There are some that you can control and some that you can't control, right? We can't really control inflation. We can't control what taxes are going to be. We can't control what our rate of return is going to be. Things we can control: expenses during retirement. So if instead of needing $15,000 in retirement, you need $12,000 a month in retirement, that's going to have a significant impact. That's a variable you can control. So having your home paid off, that's something that not only protects you from inflation, but it also lowers your expenses in retirement. Also, retirement age. Certainly, what I found is that I talk to clients a lot about is they want to know when they can retire. What they're really talking about is when can they be financially independent. And, if you're able to reach financial independence at 62, but you choose to work to 64, that's going to have a positive impact. Even if you're not making retirement contributions in that time, it's just 2 years that you're not taking withdrawals. Now, certainly health can play a role, and potentially the need for long-term care, and there's ways and measures to do that you could protect that. But I think, again, when you're preparing your financial plan or your retirement projections, certainly the inflation rate that you're using can have an impact, but all of the other variables, making sure that you're being conservative when you're using them as well too. This is an exercise that we go through with all of our clients, where we are continually looking at retirement projections. We have some really great software that we're able to do that. You want to make sure that you're working with a professional that knows what they're doing and has the experience. On that note, we would love to be a resource. We would love to have a conversation with you as well too. Feel free to reach out to schedule a consultation, and we can talk through this topic and any other that you have interest in. Thank you for taking the time today.
OJM is a multidisciplinary wealth management firm. For nearly 2 decades, our firm has helped physicians across the U.S. reduce taxes, protect assets, and achieve their financial goals. OJM Group offers viewers a complimentary consultation where we can answer your questions to see if our firm might be a good fit for your situation. Simply click the button below to schedule your free consultation. We hope to speak with you soon. Thanks for watching.